Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Robert Jensen. He's a professor of journalism at the University of Texas at Austin. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Sonali.
Thousands of Mexican activists and journalists have been protesting the brutal murders of a well-known journalist named Ruben Espinosa and 4 women. Espinosa, who had faced threats over his work in the state of Veracruz, had fled to Mexico City fearing for his life. He was seemingly tracked down and killed. The Mexican government has not yet identified formally the 4 other women who were killed alongside him, but media have identified Nadia Vera, an activist, and Yesenia Quiroz Alfaro, a student. The 2 other women included another activist and a domestic worker. The women appear to have been sexually assaulted before being killed. All 5 victims showed signs of struggle. Their bodies were bound and appear to have been tortured before they were killed. The Mexican government is saying it is investigating the murders. Reports indicate that this year has been a particularly bloody year for Mexican journalists. Well, Bob, there seems to be one crisis after another in Mexico. Do you think that this latest horrific incident is also going to galvanize people like we've seen in the past 6 months or so in Mexico?
Well, that's the only hope. Everyone understands that police officials, the government, the military is not trustworthy in investigating these things, so it will take public pressure. As someone living in the United States, as a U.S. citizen, I know that the most important thing we can do in the United States is to try to argue for a sensible drug policy, because everyone understands that the force behind this violence against journalism is the drug war. And as long as the United States pursues its insane drug policies, the market in the United States will be there, the cartels will be working, and journalists will be at risk. It's been a particularly bloody decade for journalists, and I think this even more than ever makes the case for drug reform in the United States.
Here in the United States, a Republican presidential candidate forum in New Hampshire yesterday drew on stage 14 people, among them Jeb Bush, Rick Perry, Chris Christie, and the sole woman Carly Fiorina. Among the issues discussed was the economy, immigration, and the federal budget. FactCheck.org released a lengthy list of questionable statements made by the candidates. And the event was notable for its awkwardness. According to the New York Times, quote, the Republicans gawked at each rival as each rival took his or her turn on stage, looking at times as if they were being forced to sit through a tedious school assembly. Donald Trump was glaring in his absence at the forum. Mr. Trump apparently felt that the event was not worth his while. In a CBS News poll released just this morning, Trump leads the Republican field of candidates. He commands 24% popularity, with his closest rival being Jeb Bush at a mere 13%. Well, Bob, why is Trump leading the field? I mean, is it just that he's shining with promise, or that his many rivals simply do not inspire much confidence among Republican voters?
Well, as you've been speaking, I've been suppressing laughter because, of course, the Republican presidential race is kind of a sick joke. But we should take it seriously, of course, for a couple of things. First of all, I think what's important about this race is not just what it says about the Republicans, but what it says about our politics in general. The fact that money dominates the entertainment value of politicians like Donald Trump. There's something, deeply wrong with the American electoral system. And I think this is just a kind of a farce that displays that even more directly. It's also a reminder, when we look past the circus, that the Republican Party is been pushed to the right systematically over the last 30 or 40 years, to the point where it's really not a normal electoral party in the way that you think of that in most of the industrial world. It's kind of a renegade operation. And that the fact that there are so many fringe candidates, so many really untenable candidates, just demonstrates that the Republicans are in a very strange place. And that's dangerous because, of course, even though we might think of them as off the charts loony, a good chunk of the American public supports them.
And finally, in a victory for animal rights activists, a federal judge just ruled the so-called Ag-Gag law unconstitutional in Idaho, saying that, quotes, food and worker safety are matters of public concern. Judge B. Lynn Windmill ruled against a law that was passed in the wake of an undercover video showing animal cruelty at Betancourt Dairies, which is Idaho's largest dairy farm. Industry groups fought back, saying that the filming was intended to hurt their business, but state legislators then craft a bill in their support, and Idaho Governor C.L. Butch Otter signed it. The judge who ruled against the law yesterday said that anti-trespassing laws already protect farms. The group Mercy for Animals released a statement saying this is a huge victory not only for the Constitution, but animals and consumers. Bob, how important is this ruling, even if you're not an animal rights activist?
It's very crucial for journalism and for the larger questions of our food system. Remember, this is not just about cruelty to animals, it's about human health, since factory farming is extremely dangerous to our own health. And it's also about the larger question of whether we can design a sustainable food system. So this is important. And of course, this is not the only state that had an Ag-Gag law. Last time I counted, I think there are 5 others. So we hope that this case proceeds and the laws around the country are struck down. There are also food libel laws that have been pushed to try and suppress critique of the food system. One other thing that's worth noting is the original Ag-Gag law came from a model that was written by ALEC, right? That very famous right-wing group that's always looking for ways to undermine public safety, consumer sovereignty, and push the rights of corporations. So this is something we need to keep an eye on.
Bob Jensen, thanks as always for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Sonali.
Robert Jensen is an author and a professor of journalism at the University of Texas at Austin. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.